going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster here on this Monday, November 21st, 2022. It is about 12:34 p.m. California time, and a lot of earthquake activity ramping up overnight all across the Indonesia region and areas around Papua New Guinea. Some movement up into the Alaska region as well along the Aleutian Trench. We're kind of watching this zone here for some movement. Also off the coast here of Oregon, seen a 5.2. Let's go ahead and jump into the latest activity here from the USGS. Looks like an earthquake here, 2.1 at Mount Rainier popping up. That's kind of a larger one. It's kind of small for general magnitudes, but we haven't seen a 2-pointer up here around Mount Rainier in quite some time. We'll check out the seismograph station here in just a little bit at that volcano. Looks like that 2.1 struck on the northeastern flank here of Mount Rainier at about, wow, very shallow earthquake, negative 1.9. I want to see if this has been reviewed. It has been reviewed by a seismologist, so that will stand as an official earthquake there at that depth. Also some movement around Mount St. Helens kicking up like crazy. It's been generally active here over the past couple days as far as small microquakes go. Definitely a noticeable increase in activity, I would say, across the Cascade volcanoes right now. Over here across the ocean, well, across the subduction zone, the Cascadia megathrust, we had a 5.2 coming in. Just a few hours ago, a couple hours ago, actually about 8 o'clock in the morning my time, 5.2 at 10 kilometers deep. Now this is on called the Blanco fracture zone. There's a little bit of left-right movement here when it comes to the general plate movement. So possibly with this activity we've seen here, we might want to watch for some further movement here down into Northern California. Definitely a sign of regional increasing pressure out here. And if you want to talk about regional, generally here along the northwest or northeastern section of the Pacific Plate has all shown quite a bit of movement overnight in the past couple days here with that push of activity up into the Alaska area. So that 5.2 in the Blanco fracture zone, looks like there was where's that 2-pointer at? Stand by for just a second. 2.0. Oh, way down here. Okay, along the Gorda Ridges. Late looks like late afternoon time frame. And then had a 2.7 there in the Blanco fracture zone yesterday as well. So definitely a seismic uptick across the region here. Not seeing any specific activity across the Cascadia right now. That's Cascadia megathrust zone, which extends up here just past the Vancouver Island ranges outside of the village of Queen Charlotte area, Queen Charlotte Sound, and extends down into the Northern California area. And that's a major seismic hazard here along the Pacific Northwest. It's been sleeping for 322 years. So next earthquake could easily be a 9.0 or a partial rupture at 8.5 along the southern end. Either way, it's a lot of time since the last rupture of this subduction zone. Okay, Northern California. See what we got. Definitely some activity kicking up along the creeping section here of the San Andreas Fault. That's just around the Diablo mountain range. Couple, what do we got there for magnitudes? Let me zoom in a little bit here. Looks like a couple 2s near Pinnacle, 2.4 and 2.4. Couple of these kicking up overnight time frame. Some movement kicking up around the Long Valley supervolcano as well. Definitely a noticeable increase in activity across this region of California. Quite a few microquakes, including a 2.5 there in the just outside the Oakhurst area. Ridgecrest area down south. Looks like this is kind of the quiet zone today. Only a couple small earthquakes. We got one earthquake near the Bodfish area. 0.9. Southern California. See what we got for activity here. One earthquake off the San Jacinto fault zone. I'm not seeing anything specific far as any unusual activity goes there in Southern California. All that activity is in the microquake range. Nothing above 2.5 for that area. Across Nevada, noticing a pretty good uptick in movement across the Candelaria Hills here outside of Tonopah. This area seen a 6-pointer a couple years back. I think it was 2019. Aftershock activity has been somewhat quiet, minimal, over the past couple months, but it comes and goes in little swarms. And it looks like today we're getting a little bit of activity kind of increasing in that region with a 2.9 just south here of the Candelaria Hills off 15, 5.4 kilometers deep. Earthquake coming into the center portion here of Nevada, 3.0 in the Railroad Valley area. Looks like 10 kilometers deep for that 3-pointer, and some activity kicking up against the mountain range here in Utah. Yellowstone National Park has shown some activity as well, with about 13 earthquakes listed up here on the map. Nothing big, but definitely a little bit of increasing activity as well. This whole area, for the most part, along the North American plate is showing a seismic activity increase for sure overnight and today. 2.1, so I'm kind of curious about that. Let me go over to the PNSN network. This is a tremor activity from last night, by the way. Yesterday's total of 39 epicenters. Not a big deal. We'll see what it looks like a little bit later tonight when they update. But I want to check out Mount Rainier, see what's going on there. It has been swarming recently, and very small swarms as far as the micro magnitudes go. But kind of want to see what's going on here today with the recorded seismographs. Here's some of those small microquakes I'm talking about. Here's some of these earthquakes popping up here over the last hour. Looks like a couple of them. I'm counting, if you want to count these here, looks like we have at least 6 of them here in the Mount Rainier area. They are only showing 2 earthquakes up here on the map, with a 2.1 coming in at, let's see when the UTC time was. I want to get an exact measurement. 2010. So 2010 is going to be this bigger one right here. That's going to be the 2.1. But that's been followed up here, it looks like, by a couple smaller microquakes and then a couple larger ones than these little microquakes. And those are not showing up yet at the Mount Rainier area here. As far as the, it looks like maybe they did report one of them, huh? 12, let's see what the UTC time is on that 0.7, 2017. So 2017 is going to be just prior to this. So it looks like they may have accounted for one of these, but some of these here look like they could be in the mid 1.5 range or so, following that the larger one. So we'll keep an eye on it. Definitely developing here across the Mount Rainier area as far as earthquake activity goes. But for now, we'll definitely keep an eye on that region that has been swarming. Mount St. Helens got some activity in and around the volcano. Let's go ahead and check out the latest activity here across the volcanic seismicity map at Mount St. Helens. And this area has been swarming too, actually, for the past, I'd say past few months. No major earthquake activity and no major, like far as volcanic unrest goes, far as tremor or magma movement. This is all just basically some small microquakes. That earthquake there is going to be, I believe that's going to be the 5-pointer off the coast of California, off the coast of Oregon. I want to double check that here and make sure. 5.2 coming in at 1542. 1542 is going to be right about here. So yeah, that's going to be the 5.2 off the coast of Oregon on the Blanco fracture zone, showing up pretty nicely with some P and S waves there across this seismograph. But far as local seismic activity, looks like there's definitely been a couple here throughout the last 24 hours, and nothing major. Not seeing any magnitudes compared to what Mount Rainier is seeing as far as that 2.1 and the other earthquakes are, as far as those ones shown up on the map. But definitely a noticeable increase here across the Cascades. We'll watch that pretty closely. Up into the Alaska area, we've seen a lot of activity here pushing north over the past couple days, and this goes 7 days all magnitudes map here. a big general push of movement up against the Brooks or the Alaska Range, all through Denali. We had quite a few swarms up here outside of Fairbanks, and even some earthquake activity way up north where we normally don't see it, up around the Beaufort Sea area and across portions of the Brooks Range. That activity is a good sign of some impending pressure out here, and it has been for a couple days now. And last night we've seen a, well, actually not last night, earlier this morning, we've seen an earthquake come in here to the Aleutian Trench, a 5.5. And that came in about, let's see, 0709. These two earthquakes came in roughly about the same time here. The first one is going to be the Aleutian Trench, and then we got followed up here by that 5.2 off the coast of Oregon, just roughly about 30 minutes later or so. So shows you how quickly adjustments can take place out here across a wide area, across the large distance of the Pacific Plate. So 5.5. This originally came in, I think, as a 6-pointer in this area. I still think we have a possibility of seeing something more. This area right here, across this area of the subduction zone, has been relatively quiet in terms of, well, nothing above 4.0 over the past month. So that's definitely a zone to watch. Kuril-Kamchatka Trench here, I'm not seeing anything on the map, but on the USGS side, or the EMSC model here, we got a couple 4s kicking up here across the, looks like definitely into the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. I'm not for sure why this is not being shown here on the map. One day. Kind of odd. But a little gnat flying in front of my face. Let's go to the EMSC model here real quick and see what we got. Kick this in. And we'll take a gander at this and see what's going on here across the area. Well, we got a 4.6 coming in within the last, about half an hour or so, it looks like. But there's been a couple 4s there in our watch zone. And I say that's our watch zone because it has been building up strain for quite a while in this area with only minimal earthquake movement. Let's see, where am I here? I'm kind of getting off center. Let's see if I can find that again. I was trying to figure out the exact location of those quakes, but not seeing it. Okay, but either way, back out here to the main map and see where we're at. Either way, it looks like there's at least one 4.6 coming in within the last half hour, as noted on the EMSC model. Sometimes it does take the USGS quite a while. I don't know why, but recently they've been awfully slow in terms of reporting earthquakes. So I don't know. Maybe they're having technical issues. Maybe I'll email them and find out what's going on with their reporting here today. But some earthquake activity there into the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. Watch that zone pretty closely again for some potential larger movement. And it looks like there's 2 earthquakes there. One buried underneath the other. 4.6 and a 4.9, a sizable increase there across the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. 92 kilometers and 60 kilometers there for those earthquakes. Now, I'm not for certain if these have been reviewed or not. Source parameters have not yet been reviewed, so these magnitudes here, and also the depth of these magnitudes could be readjusted after a review by a professional, their seismologist. Yeah, so now I see the 2 different earthquakes here with different time stamps. But watch that zone pretty closely. One earthquake into the Izu Trench coming in last night, 5.2, just off the coast of Japan, but 416 kilometers deep. Holy smokes. That's only going to apply further pressure upstream and into the surface regions here of the Mariana Trench. Indonesia has seen a pretty, I can't say it was a large earthquake, a 5.6, somewhat of a moderate quake in terms of the magnitude, but it was pretty shallow, and it did a lot of damage here around this region of Indonesia. Quite a bit of damage, in fact, and some unfortunate deaths with this earthquake activity kicked up in this region here. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that because I'll probably just completely slaughter it, and I don't want to. But this was felt, like I said, over a broad area in the area of the Indonesia region, and some pretty strong shaking and a lot of damage to the buildings and whatnot there. As you can see, the orange pager system there shows the estimated economic losses here. Up there pretty elevated, and also the estimated fatalities was elevated as well. They did put out a little tectonic summary on this area, which is highly seismically active, by the way. The November 21st, 2022 5.6 Indonesia earthquake occurred at shallow depth as a result of strike-slip faulting within the crust of the Sunda plate. Focal mechanisms indicate that the rupture occurred on either a steeply dipping north striking right lateral strike slip fault, say that 100 times, or maybe not 100 times, at least twice, or a steeply dipping east striking left lateral strike slip fault. About 260 kilometers southwest of this event, the Australia plate moves north-northeast at about 59 mm per year. That's actually pretty elevated with respect to the Sunda plate subducting at the Sunda Trench. This region of the plate boundary between Australia and the Sunda plates is highly seismically active. There's been some pretty large earthquakes in this region throughout the years. So 5.6, yeah, 5.6 can definitely do some damage in certain areas. That's for sure. So definitely, we've been watching that zone pretty closely. The Java Trench has shown quite a bit of activity here over the past week within this zone where the Indonesia earthquake struck, and it's kind of right there in that little seismic gap here, and quite a bit of damage. That's unfortunate there for that area, but we got to look at zones here over the past week that really haven't been kicked up, or over the past 30 days actually, zones that may be missing some seismic activity, because technically this zone sees quite a bit of earthquake activity. I don't think we're done with the Java Trench here. Mariana Trench up here has seen some activity, but not a lot. Over the last 30 days, just a few 4s and some 5s. And our zone up here that's been stuck and quiet, building up a lot of strain, the Kuril Kamchatka Trench, seen some minor activity. But even then, over the past few months, this has been just very minimal across this zone. So got to watch that area pretty closely here. We have noticed a increase in activity outside here of Afghanistan, with quite a few 4s coming in overnight and this morning time frame. Definitely a noticeable increase in pressure activity out there in that region, following a lot of activity. The activity train here, the earthquake train that kind of swoops around this area throughout northern India and gets quite a bit of strain built up here across the Himalayas, and this area of Afghanistan seeing quite a bit of pressure. Outside of Greece, of course, we've seen that 5.5 coming in. That was originally a 6-pointer, but again, after review, they downgraded it to a 5.5. The preliminary earthquake data systems, the computers there, the programs itself, send out the data from different seismograph readings, right? They'll take an average from many different seismographs in the area and take that average and put it out as a preliminary earthquake, like a 6.0. After review of a seismologist, geologist, they review everything and then make the technical analysis of it, and then make an adjustment according to what they review, and then of course that affects the magnitude of this earthquake. So it's like that on any system that gets sent out. It could always get upgraded, downgraded, and we've seen phantom earthquakes as well. We'll have a large earthquake, say an 8-pointer over here, and then somewhere over in California it would be picked up as a phantom 3 or 4 being kicked off the coast here. But technically it's not a real earthquake. It's just kind of like a phantom earthquake that's being picked up, or a seismic. It's picking up the seismic wave from that 8-pointer, and tends to think that it's local, but it's not. So we see that quite often during a large earthquakes. What do we got here along the Garlock Fault? 1.3, pretty shallow earthquake here across the region. But Big Island, see what's going on here with all this activity. It's kind of sitting there just in the middle of all this activity. Looks pretty quiet for now. Only 10 earthquakes across the southeastern flank here of Mauna Loa. Up at the summit, got about 4. Nothing major going on yet. I'll definitely keep an eye on Hawaii. See what else here. Across the Tonga Trench, things been pretty active. Although today it looks like things kind of calmed down. Did have 4.9 into the Tonga Trench. Upstream here along the subduction zone itself, kind of where the strain tends to build. I still don't think we're done with activity across the New Zealand region. So watch the Kermadec Trench, New Zealand area pretty closely. Prior to all this movement around the Indonesia area and upstream there, I should say, up towards the northwest, we've seen a 4.5 out in Australia, Derby, Australia. Don't really see too much activity. This is the historical map here of earthquakes since about 1900 or so, and you can see it's pretty spotty at best around this region, but it does look like they get some magnitude 5 to 6 pointers out here historically. So, but it just doesn't happen too often as far as earthquake activity in that region of Australia. Let's see here. All right, let's check out Yellowstone. I want to go over here and check out the seismographs, and for that I've been using the University of Utah education website here, and this is the not really an overview. Well, it is an overview of seismographs out here, but not like we normally use from our Yellowstone thumbnails. That site is still offline. We'll go ahead and check out activity here around the northwest corner of the park at Yellowstone, and definitely some activity here overnight. Nothing major. There is the earthquakes off the Oregon coast, and I believe the other one's going to be the Aleutian Trench area. Those two earthquakes striking pretty close to each other. Remember, as far as the timestamp goes, but thousands of miles away from each other. It's an earthquake localized here to the Yellowstone region, and it looks like the USGS has showed some of those popping up here. About 13 earthquakes listed up here on the map, and overnight. So nothing big, but still a seismically active day across the North American plate and northwest or northeastern section here. Definitely active across the Indonesia area. Chile, pretty quiet right now. South America region in general is quiet. We did have a 4.9 coming in yesterday underneath Argentina, 151 kilometers deep. Puerto Rico, not a whole lot going on. Normally that's the one that gets squeezed around and bumped around and all sorts of stuff. But when things are kind of quiet down here across South America region and the Atlantic, things tend to mellow out here a little bit across the Caribbean plate. We do have one earthquake in the last hour, 2.1, 25 kilometers deep. Speaking of the Atlantic, we did have a 4.8 well off the coast, Portugal. 10 kilometers deep. Of course, that's a divergent boundary out here, the separation of the seafloor just north of this fracture zone here. Nothing going on further south. The South Sandwich Islands look pretty quiet there for now. All right, solar weather activity. I think we dodged the coronal hole, and I mentioned that a couple days ago, didn't I? We only seen a very minimal amount of KP index here over the last 24 hours when we were expecting conditions up there around G1, KP index of 5. It was forecasted, and that didn't play out. And that's all got to do here with the position of 46, the coronal hole, which is well onto the southern side of the sun, southern hemisphere here of the sun, and directed away from Earth. I kind of seen it, but I kind of thought maybe we'd get a glancing blow. The forecasters called for a pretty good hit, G1 storming conditions, and it never happened. So it completely missed us, due to the location here of that coronal hole. It'd have to be positioned a little bit more center face of the sun. And right now, there's a couple small coronal holes that are facing us, but that's not going to do too much compared to what 46 could have done if that was directly facing us. Sunspot activity, 3147 here, is now into position far as being geo-effective if anything were to pop off. It's a pretty nice sunspot, but it doesn't have a lot of instability here at the magnetic polar features. Just not a whole lot of mixing in there, so it kind of looks like it's degraded over the past 12 hours or so up onto this sunspot. Yeah, it's got a little bit of instability conditions here with this polarity of the magnetic structure, but I don't know. It's hard to say. These things aren't really looking promising right now for any major flaring. The current conditions here for the flare activity shows pretty neutral, below the sea level threshold. Looks like maybe we had a minor sea flare yesterday, but things are pretty minimal right now. Not really crackling or popping as far as activity goes. 65% chance of a C flare, 15% chance for an M flare, 1% or less probably for the X flare probability. But I think we're done with the seeing any chance of that coronal hole hitting us. We did see a little spike in the density, a little bit of the speed and elevation, the speed there from the solar wind, that CME, or the coronal hole, I should say. But it was just barely a nick here on Earth. It definitely shot south of us, and conditions are pretty neutral right now. So we'll definitely keep an eye on these sunspots, see if they advance any, because they can definitely change pretty quickly throughout the hours and days. All right, folks, have a good day. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you guys a little bit later on tonight with the update. I'll definitely watch a couple of these areas out here around the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, folks, with the major... Man, that's just a lot of activity here across the Indonesia area. And that's showing all the smaller quakes as well. So still quite a push of earthquake activity here. You know, a 5.6 moderate earthquake, but this whole area can see much, much bigger quakes than that. So just be on guard. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later tonight, folks. Have a good one.